So, if you're sitting somewhere comfortable right now, maybe in your home office or just relaxing in the living room, I actually want you to close your eyes for a second and just picture a Bitcoin mining farm.
Oh, yeah, that usually brings up a very specific image.
Right. Like what immediately comes to mind, if you're like most people, you're visualizing something intensely, I don't know, dystopian.
Absolutely.
You're probably seeing this massive, windowless, corrugated steel warehouse sitting in the middle of a barren desert in Texas or like somewhere near the Arctic Circle.
Right. Surrounded by a chain link fence.
Yeah, exactly. And you're imagining rows upon endless rows of metal racks glowing with harsh LED lights. And most vividly, you're hearing the sound.
Oh, the sound is the worst part.
That deafening, high-pitched jet engine scream of thousands of industrial cooling fans just uh, fighting a losing battle against the heat. You picture a facility that literally requires its own private power substation, a team of specialized engineers wearing ear protection, and, millions of dollars in venture capital just to keep the entire thing from melting down into a puddle of silicon.
It's a profoundly intimidating mental image.
It really is. It feels like the absolute pinnacle of an unapproachable, hyper-industrial digital Wild West.
And the reason that image is so prevalent is because, well, for the better part of the last decade, it's been completely accurate.
Really?
Completely.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the sheer economics of the network created this massive arms race. It pushed the act of securing the blockchain so far out of the hands of the average everyday person that it basically ceased to be a participatory technology for the public.
Right.
It became a spectator sport,
Yeah.
something you read about in financial headlines, but certainly not something you would ever consider engaging with inside your own home. But the reason we're doing this deep dive today is because that entire paradigm, that massive, noisy industrial monopoly, is actually being dismantled.
It really is. It's fascinating to watch.
Piece by piece, device by device, right inside normal people's houses. Today, we're exploring a homegrown revolution, largely centered right now in the UK, that is quietly bringing Bitcoin mining straight back into your living room.
And not in a disruptive way either.
No, exactly. The wild part is, it isn't turning your house into a noisy server farm. It's being redesigned to look, sound, and feel like premium consumer tech, like something you would buy at a boutique design store.
The philosophical shift here it really can't be overstated. We're witnessing a distinct migration from the industrial megascale back down to the individual.
Yeah.
And it is entirely reshaping what it means to actually participate in a decentralized network.
So our mission for this deep dive is to figure out the how and the why behind this shift. And to guide us, we have an incredible stack of sources on the desk today.
Some really great material to go through.
We're pulling heavily from a brilliant breakdown over at normiecrypto.com, specifically an article titled Cutting Through the Noise: Why Solo Mining is the UK's Next Homegrown Revolution.
A great piece.
And alongside that, we have actual product specifications, open source design philosophies, and cost analysis guides from a UK outfit called the Solo Mining Co.
Right.
Our goal today is to deeply understand how bespoke hardware design, some genuinely brilliant home energy hacks, and what the community calls a lottery ticket mindset are making crypto accessible for the everyday normie.
Context is everything when we look at these sources, though, because if you assume the goal of putting a miner on your desk is just to, I don't know, get rich quick, the math won't make sense to you at
Yeah,
all.
really. So it's not just a money printing machine.
No, not at all. This movement is fundamentally about true self-sovereignty. It's about actively returning to decentralization, which, if we actually look back at the original white paper, is exactly how this network was supposed to operate before the warehouse farms took over.
Right. One CPU, one vote.
Exactly. The modern focus is completely different now. It's about maximizing the thermal and electrical efficiency of your specific home and claiming a tiny personal stake in the digital frontier, all without disrupting your peace and quiet.
I love that framing. True self-sovereignty without your living room looking like a villain's underground lair.
Yes.
But to really grasp why someone in, say, London or Manchester is deciding to put one of these glowing little boxes on their bookshelf, we have to unpack a fundamental shift in how people are choosing to operate.
We do. We need to talk about the migration away from massive collective pools.
Right, and the decision to go it alone. Because the sources break this down into two very distinct paths: pool mining and solo mining.
And the divergence between those two paths is really where the psychology of this entire movement begins.
Okay, let's look at pool mining first.
Yeah, let's start there because mechanically, that's how the industrial farms operate, and it's what most people are vaguely familiar with. The sources mention joining forces with others, specifically pointing to a pool called Ocean.xyz.
Let's break down the mechanics for the listener real quick, because when we say mining, we're really just talking about a computer playing a global, incredibly fast guessing game, right?
That's a great way to put it.
Like the network presents a cryptographic puzzle,
Mm-hmm.
basically a combination lock, and the miner just sits there spinning the dial, trying billions of combinations a second.
That is a highly accurate analogy.
Sure.
So the cryptographic puzzle is called a hashing algorithm, specifically SHA-256.
SHA-256.
Yeah. Your machine takes a block of pending network transactions, runs a mathematical formula on them, and spits out a long string of numbers and letters. If that string starts with a certain number of zeros, your machine has found the right combination.
It picked the lock.
Exactly. It solves the block, processes the transactions, and the network rewards you with newly minted Bitcoin.
But because there are millions of machines around the world all guessing at the exact same time, the odds of your one specific machine guessing the right combination lock are astronomically low.
Like, basically zero.
Right. So people realized early on, hey, if we all group our machines together into a pool and we search for the answer collectively, we'll find blocks way more often.
Yeah.
And when the pool finds the answer, everybody splits the reward based on how much computational guessing power they actually contributed.
Precisely. And the result of that collective effort is that you get a steady, predictable drip of income.
Wow.
The sources note that these tiny fractions of Bitcoin are commonly known as sats, which is short for satoshis. This method is universally referred to in the space as stacking sats.
Stacking sats. I've heard that phrase.
Yeah, it provides constant, measurable feedback. You check your pool dashboard, and you can see a few more pennies worth of value appearing every single day.
So it's sort of like the digital equivalent of a low-yield savings account.
Okay.
You put your capital to work, in this case, your computing hardware and your electricity, and you get a tiny, predictable trickle of interest back continuously.
Exactly. It feels safe. It feels measurable.
But then the sources introduce the alternative, solo mining. And this completely flips the script.
Oh, it really does.
This is the all-or-nothing path. You run your own hardware. Crucially, you run your own node. And you utilize a solo mining software pool. They mention services like solohash.co.uk, which facilitate this connection.
Right.
In this scenario, you're not teaming up with anyone. If your little home rig happens to be the one that guesses the correct cryptographic combination lock,
Yeah.
you do not share a single dime with the pool. You keep the entire block reward for yourself.
Which, to carry your analogy forward, is the absolute opposite of a steady savings account. It's the purest definition of high variance computing.
Okay, hold on. This is where I have to play the skeptic for a minute on behalf of the listener.
Go for it.
Because mathematically, if you're running a single machine on your desk in the UK and you're competing against those dystopian Texas warehouse farms that have hundreds of thousands of machines guessing at the same time, your odds of finding a block are infinitesimal.
Like finding a needle in a haystack made of needles?
Exactly. It's literally like buying a lottery ticket. So why on earth would a normal person burn their own domestic electricity on a digital lottery they will almost certainly never win instead of just taking the guaranteed steady income from a pool?
It's the most rational question you can ask. And if you approach it purely from the perspective of short-term, predictable fiat currency returns, solo mining looks like a completely irrational choice.
Right, it looks crazy.
But to understand the true appeal, why this is becoming a localized revolution, you have to look at the architecture of the network itself. Solo mining is not just a gamble, it's literally the backbone of the network's integrity.
Unpack that for us. How does a little box on my desk secure a global network better than a giant pool?
It all comes down to the concentration of power. When you join a massive pool, you're outsourcing the verification of the network rules to the pool operator. The pool decides which transactions to include in the block. The pool operator holds the power. If a government or a malicious actor coerces the operators of the 3 largest mining pools, they could theoretically censor transactions or even attack the network.
Because the pools have centralized the decision-making, even though the physical hardware is decentralized.
Exactly. But when you solo mine, the sources emphasize that you must run your own node. A node is the rule checker. It's the referee of the network.
Oh, I see.
When you run your own node alongside your own solo miner, you are independently verifying every single transaction on the network yourself. You're not trusting a massive third-party pool in another country to do the verification for you.
Wow.
You are fortifying the network's censorship resistance personally. The Solo Mining Co. explicitly states this in their ethos. They write, "It's Bitcoin mining as it should be, decentralized, private, and powered by the people."
Ah, I see. So the motivation moves away from just like, how do I make a steady $2 a day? And it becomes a philosophical stance. You are actively contributing to the resilience of the system.
It's highly ideological, yes, but it also has a profound psychological effect.
How so?
The sources talk about how solo mining transforms the act of computing from a dry, invisible background process into an engaging daily story. It becomes an educational hobby. You learn about networking protocols. You learn how to compile open source software. You learn about heat management.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And from a psychological standpoint, every single day you wake up, look at that glowing device on your desk, and know that it's silently rolling the dice for a full block reward, a ticket that you bought once in the form of the hardware, and it simply never expires.
A permanent daily lottery ticket that also happens to defend a global financial network. That is a compelling narrative.
It really is.
But it brings us crashing into a very harsh physical reality, the elephant in the room. We have to tackle the hack.
Electricity?
Yeah, because even if the philosophy is beautiful and the lottery ticket is fun, running high-performance computing hardware 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, consumes electricity.
Right.
And if you're sitting in the UK right now listening to this, you know that electricity is painfully, historically expensive.
Oh, without a doubt. This is the pivot point of the entire discussion. If the energy economics don't work, the movement dies.
Right.
To understand how the average person is affording this, we have to put down the economics textbook for a second and pick up a physics textbook.
Yeah.
We need to talk about the physical reality of computation.
Let's do it. Because the normicrypto.com article calls this the solar hack. And when I finally grasped the underlying mechanics of this, it felt like a genuine paradigm shift.
It really is a shift. So let's look at the fundamental physical reality of a computer processor. Any computer processor. When an electrical current flows through the silicon pathways of a microchip to perform a calculation to guess that combination lock, it encounters electrical resistance.
Right, joule heating. If I remember my high school physics, whenever electricity moves through a resistor, the friction of those electrons moving creates heat.
Precisely. And in the context of a microchip, it is effectively 100% heat efficient.
100%.
Yes. Every single watt of electrical energy that goes into that chip to perform the logic operation is eventually dissipated as heat into the surrounding air. The computation itself doesn't store the energy becomes thermal output.
Okay, I'm following.
As the article from the Solo Mining Co. bluntly puts it, wattage is wattage and wattage costs. If a miner draws 25 watts of electricity from your wall socket, it's producing roughly 25 watts of heat.
Wait. So what you're saying is that a Bitcoin miner at a purely physical thermodynamic level is literally just an electric space heater.
Yep.
It's an electric resistance heater that just happens to guess cryptographic puzzles as a byproduct of getting hot.
That is not a metaphor. That is exactly what it is. A traditional electric space heater pushes electricity through a resistive wire to make it hot. A miner pushes electricity through a silicon chip to make it hot. The thermal output is virtually identical per watt.
Okay, but if it's just a heater, how does this save or make anyone money? If I run an electric heater in my house in July, I'm just wasting money. And electricity in the UK is, what, around 25 to 30 pence per kilowatt hour right now? It's exorbitant.
It is, but this is where we introduce the solar hack detailed in the sources and why this is becoming so specifically popular in households with renewable energy. We need to look at the broader picture of the UK power grid.
Okay.
Let's say you're a homeowner who did the responsible thing. You installed solar panels on your roof to generate green energy.
Okay, I have panels on my roof, the sun comes up, and I start generating power.
Right. But here is the classic dilemma. The sun shines brightest in the middle of the day. And what are most people doing in the middle of the day?
They're at work.
Exactly. They are not at home. The house is empty. The television is off. The oven is off. So your solar panels are soaking up the sun and generating a massive amount of electricity, but your house has no demand for it at that exact moment.
I'm generating excess supply. And I know from looking at how the grid works, what they call the duck curve, that energy providers actually hate this because everyone with solar panels is dumping power into the grid at the exact same time midday when the grid doesn't actually need it.
Exactly. Electrical grids are highly sensitive balancing acts. Energy must be consumed the exact moment it's generated, or it must be stored, which is
Yeah.
incredibly difficult and expensive.
Right.
Because you're dumping excess energy into the grid when demand is low, the energy provider essentially penalizes you. They either refuse to buy that excess back from you at all, or they offer you an insulting export tariff, absolute pennies on the pound, compared to what they charge you to buy power back from them at night.
So you're sitting there generating this incredibly valuable, pure green energy on your roof. But because of the archaic nature of grid transmission and storage, the grid treats your energy as effectively worthless. You're just bleeding value.
This is the exact inefficiency that the home miner solves. The miner acts as a localized, decentralized energy sponge.
A sponge.
Yeah, instead of giving your excess green energy back to the grid for a fraction of its worth, you route it into your solo miner. The miner soaks up those watts and puts them to work computationally.
Okay, this is where the Blinkist level insight hit me when I was reviewing the notes.
Yeah.
I realized that the miner isn't just a hack for the user to get free lottery tickets. It's functioning as a decentralized battery.
Explain your thought process there.
Well, normally, if you want to save that midday solar energy, you have to buy a massive chemical battery like a lithium-ion wall battery. But those are wildly expensive, they degrade over time, they require conflict minerals, and they only hold so much power. But if you route that excess solar energy into a miner, you aren't storing the electricity chemically. You're taking the energy, using it immediately to do cryptographic work, and storing the value of that energy globally on the blockchain. You're transforming volatile, localized electrical energy into a permanent, highly liquid digital asset. It's a cryptographic battery.
That is a phenomenal way to conceptualize it. You are capturing stranded energy and converting it into digital scarcity. Now, let's ground this in the specific mathematics provided by the sources, because seeing the actual numbers demystifies the entire process. They use the metric of the kilowatt hour or kilowatt.
All right, which is how our energy bills are calculated. 1 kilowatt hour is the amount of energy used if you run a 1,000 watt appliance for 1 solid hour.
Correct. The solo mining income provides a breakdown for a very small desk-sized miner that draws only 25 watts. A 25-watt device uses 0.025 kilowatt hours per hour.
Okay, got the calculator out.
If we assume a standard, fairly high UK energy rate of 25 pence per kilowatt hour, so £3, 25-watt miner constantly, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, costs exactly £4.50 a month.
Which, to put it in perspective, is less than the cost of a single artisan flat white at a London coffee shop.
Exactly. It's a trivial amount of money for a hobbyist. But here's the ultimate financial hack that ties back to your solar panels. If your panels are generating excess electricity that the grid won't pay you fairly for anyway, your personal cost for that power is essentially zero. You're using energy that would have been wasted.
So the running cost of the miner drops to absolute zero.
Yes. And because your operational cost is zero, every single fraction of a cent you earn if you're pool mining, or every single solo lottery ticket your machine processes, is pure 100% profit. You're literally turning excess wasted solar power into digital gold.
That is wild.
And as we established with the physics earlier, you're getting the heat output as a byproduct, which, let's be honest, in the damp, chilly climate of a UK autumn or winter, localized heat is highly desirable.
It is genuinely brilliant. You're bypassing the inefficiency of the national power grid and solving the storage problem at the domestic level.
Right.
But as I was reading this, I kept hitting a mental roadblock. The economics make total sense. The philosophy of decentralization makes sense. The physics of joule heating makes sense. But if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, nobody, and I mean absolutely nobody, wants an ugly, screaming industrial metal box sitting in their living room, even if it is technically a free lottery ticket.
Oh, for sure. The spouse acceptance factor.
Exactly. If this gear looks like it belongs in a server rack, my partner's going to throw it out the window.
Which leads us directly to the third pillar of this deep dive. The hardware innovators who are completely reimagining what a mining rig actually looks, sounds, and feels like. Because you're right. If mining is going to return to the living room, the aesthetic and acoustic design must fundamentally change. The industrial age of mining hardware is being replaced by the maker movement.
Enter a designer known as IamGPIO. This is the founder of the Solo Mining Co., and the sources describe him not just as an engineer, but as a home mining obsessive.
He really is.
He, along with a vibrant open source community, is creating bespoke, visually striking, and completely silent hardware. We're talking about devices that look like premium consumer electronics. This isn't industrial junk hidden in a closet. This is tech designed to be displayed proudly on a desk.
The terminology the sources use is home ready, and it represents a completely different engineering paradigm. In an industrial farm, the only metric that matters is how densely you can pack the chips and how fast you can push the air through them. Noise is completely irrelevant.
Right.
But for home-ready gear, silence and aesthetics are the primary design constraints. Let's walk through the 3 specific tiers of gear mentioned in the text, because they beautifully illustrate how adaptable this concept has become for different types of users.
Yeah, let's dive into the hardware. Tier 1, the entry level, is a device called the BTAX.
The ByteTax is arguably the catalyst for this entire desk mining movement. It's described as the always-on desk companion. And from an engineering standpoint, it is fascinating. The open source community essentially figured out how to extract a single, highly efficient ASIC chip, the actual silicon brain, from those massive industrial mining boards, and mount it onto a custom open source printed circuit board.
So instead of a machine with hundreds of chips roaring away, it's just one single isolated chip.
Exactly. They pair that single chip with a tiny, cheap microcontroller, like an ESP32, the kind of chip you'd find in a smart home light bulb to give it Wi-Fi capability. And then they top it with a silent, high-quality PC fan, like a Noctua fan, to keep it cool. The result is a device that draws only 25 watts of power.
And what kind of guessing power does 25 watts get you?
It produces roughly 1.2 terahashes per second. A hash is one guess at the combination lock. A terahash is 1 trillion guesses.
Whoa.
So this little silent box is making 1.2 trillion guesses every single second. It operates at an efficiency of roughly 20.8 watts per terahash.
And as we established with our math earlier, at a standard UK rate, leaving this on 247 costs about £4.50 a month. It's whisper quiet, it's highly affordable, and the sources call it brilliant for learning. I picture this looking almost like a piece of kinetic art, a polished digital desk clock with a little glowing OLED screen showing your hash rate just silently working in the background next to your keyboard.
It lowers the barrier to entry to almost zero. It requires no technical networking skills beyond connecting it to your home Wi-Fi. But once someone gets comfortable with the ByteTax, they often want to scale up. Which brings us to the second tier detailed in the sources, the NerdCax plus FAR.
I absolutely love the naming conventions in this space. The NerdCax++.
It reflects the tinkerer culture perfectly. The NerdCax++ is labeled the tinkerer's sweet spot. It takes the concept of the ByteTax and scales it up. Instead of one chip, it utilizes multiple chips or more powerful variants. It steps the power draw up from 25 watts to 90 watts. But in exchange for that higher power draw, it delivers around 5 terahashes per second.
So you're jumping from 1.2 trillion guesses a second to 5 trillion guesses a second.
Yes.
That is a massive increase in computational power, which means significantly better odds in the solo lottery or much higher steady returns if you point it at a pool. But here's the critical part. The sources emphasize that it achieves this with zero extra noise.
That is the engineering challenge they solved. Dissipating 90 watts of heat silently requires custom, oversized aluminum heat sinks and finely tuned acoustic fans. It's a beautiful piece of thermal engineering.
And let's do the math on the cost for the NerdCax++M.
The sources calculate that at £1.25 per kilowatt hour, a 90-watt device costs roughly £16.20 a month to run constantly. So you're paying a bit more, but you're getting a massive jump in hash rate efficiency, driving the efficiency down to about 18 watts per terahash. It's the perfect balance for someone who wants to take their network participation seriously without turning their home office into a sauna.
Which perfectly transitions us to the third tier, because what if you do want a sauna?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. What if you actually want to use the physics of joule heating to your advantage? That brings us to the Avalon Nano 3S.
This is a fascinating product because it's explicitly categorized by the manufacturer not just as a miner, but as a dedicated Bitcoin heater. It's designed to look like a sleek, modern desktop space heater. It draws up to 140 watts of power, providing roughly 6 terahashes per second.
Okay, let's contextualize 140 watts. A typical floor-standing electric oil radiator you might buy at, say, Argos for the winter, usually runs between 1,000 to 2,000 watts.
Yeah, they use a lot of power.
So 140 watts is not going to heat your entire house.
Yeah.
But the sources say it perfectly. If you're heating a room anyway, this power can be genuinely useful. It's designed to sit by your feet, under your desk, or next to your chair, and provide localized, gentle warmth to keep a home office comfortable
Yeah.
while you're stacking sats.
At 140 watts, it costs about £25.20 a month to run constantly at standard rates. But the economic logic flips here. If you're working from home in November in the UK, you're likely going to spend that money turning on a traditional electric space heater anyway to keep your feet warm.
Exactly. If you're already committing to buying 140 watts of thermal energy from the grid, why on earth would you use a dumb heater that does nothing to get hot?
You wouldn't.
You might as well use a smart heater that provides the exact same amount of thermal energy, but also has a chance of mining a Bitcoin block and securing a global financial network.
It completely recontextualizes the energy usage. You are no longer wasting energy on computation. You are paying for the utility of heat, and you are getting the cryptographic computation entirely for free. The energy has dual utility.
And this dual utility concept is where the maker community gets incredibly creative. Because when I looked at the accessories these designers are creating, it sealed the deal for me. The open source community isn't just making black boxes. They're merging physical lifestyle design with engineering in ways that are frankly hilarious and brilliant. The sources detail a device called the Gecko Science Mayan Coffee Bitcoin Mining Coffee Warmer.
I think this device perfectly illustrates the ethos of the movement. Utility combined with network participation.
It's incredible. It is literally a USB cup warmer. Designed by IMGPIO and another maker named SideHack. Think about how it works based on what we've discussed. The ASIC chip gets hot. Normally you put a finned aluminum heatsink and a fan on it to blow the heat away.
Right.
But they realized, wait, what if we just put a flat thermally conductive plate directly on top of the hot chip? You plug it in, the chip starts guessing cryptographic hashes, it gets hot, and you set your ceramic mug on top of it. The friction of securing the blockchain is literally keeping your Earl Grey tea hot.
It's a profound, albeit somewhat comical, demonstration of thermal reuse, and the creativity extends far beyond coffee warmers.
The sources list a whole catalog of wild hardware. There's something called the Flight Light, which is an ADS-B aviation status beacon, something aviation nerds use to track airplanes that also mines Bitcoin while it tracks flights.
Wow.
There's the Bitchin Sync, which is a custom, highly stylized aftermarket heatsink specifically for the BitTax. There's an enclosure called the Mars Lander that makes the hardware look like a retrofuturist spacecraft.
They also mention a joint design with Altair Tech called the BitChimney V2.
Yes, the BitChimney. That is a massive 60 terahash mining heater that is moving out of the realm of desktop toys and into serious room heating hardware that looks like a piece of industrial art.
It's quite the step up.
And my personal favorite accessory mentioned is the BitHalo. It is simply an interactive LED add-on board for the BitTax. It serves no computational purpose whatsoever. It just gives the device a glowing, customizable halo of light to make it look incredibly cool sitting next to your monitor.
And this answers the core question. What does this mean for the everyday person? When you look at the BitHalo or the Min Coffee Warmer, you realize that the intimidation factor has been completely eradicated.
Completely.
Is this just for hardcore command line techies anymore? Absolutely not. The entire point of this hardware revolution is approachability. It bridges the gap between complex cryptography and domestic lifestyle. It allows anyone, regardless of their technical background, to practice that true self-sovereignty we discussed at the very beginning of the hour.
You can run your own node, operate your own solo pool, verify your own transactions, and directly support the decentralization of global finance, all while simply keeping your coffee warm or heating up your chilly office. It completely flips the narrative.
It's practical, it's highly educational, and if we look at the trajectory, it's quietly revolutionary.
So, bringing this all together, if you're listening to this right now, look around your space. Think about your energy usage. Solo mining, especially with this massive new wave of UK-designed hardware, fits perfectly into the normal, everyday lifestyle.
It really does.
It takes all the mystery, all the deafening noise, and all the financial fear out of that crypto Wild West we visualized at the start. Whether you're using it to act as a cryptographic battery to capture your wasted solar power, or you just want a beautifully designed piece of kinetic desk art like the BitTax, it puts the power, the verification, and the potential rewards firmly back in your hands.
It empowers the individual at the expense of the industrial monopoly.
Exactly. So, if you're sitting there thinking, okay, I have a home office that gets cold in the winter, or I have solar panels that are bleeding energy back to the grid for pennies, the focus texts for today's deep dive lay out exactly what you should do next. This isn't abstract. There are clear steps.
And they're surprisingly easy to follow.
First, you need to find your hardware. Explore the bespoke, silent, UK-crafted miner designs we discussed today. You don't need to navigate shady international shipping. This is happening locally. You can literally search online right now for the IM GPIO Bitax and the NerdQuacks Plus Plus New. Those exact terms will lead you to the custom gear and the vibrant maker community building it.
It's all right there.
Second, you need the knowledge. Don't jump in blind. Visit the Solo Mining Co. online. That is where you'll find the comprehensive, easy-to-read educational guides, the community support forums, and the insights you need to actually set up your own node in Solo Pool without pulling your hair out.
It's an invaluable resource.
And third, keep educating yourself. Head over to normicrypto.com to continue navigating this complex world. Their entire mission is to take the jargon and the noise and translate it into clear, actionable understanding, making all of this feel like just normal tomorrow.
In keeping with the deeply philosophical yet pragmatic nature of this movement, the texts leave us with a guiding principle, a mantra for the home miner.
Yes, the golden rule of the solo miner, which I think is just brilliant. Remember, never panic, always HODL, and let your heater pay for itself.
It's the perfect pragmatic summary. But as we wrap up this deep dive, this entire discussion raises one final, highly provocative thought for you to consider.
Ooh, leave us with something good.
Well, we've established that the technology is now silent, beautiful, and thermally efficient. We know the economics work for home energy hacking, so what happens if this actually scales?
What do you mean?
If millions of households, not just in the UK but globally, realize they could turn their wasted excess solar energy into decentralized computational power, could the living rooms of everyday citizens eventually outcompete those massive centralized corporate mining farms in Texas? If everyone had a 140-watt Avalon heater under their desk, could the future of global financial security literally be powered by the collective distributed warmth of our home offices?
Wow. From dystopian screaming desert warehouses back to a silent glowing box next to your cappuccino. Think about how your home's dormant wasted energy could be quietly changing the architecture of the world's money. It makes you look at that boring plastic router in the corner of your room entirely differently, doesn't it? The technology isn't broken or out of reach anymore. It's just been completely redesigned for the living room.